right, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in to the Twin Branches podcast. I'm Connor, and we are here with our boy Tyler.
So,
And yeah,
yeah, just two
Dude.
idiots about to talk about some deep shit.
Yeah, facts, 100%. I thank y'all for tuning in. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. And let's get into it. So, Tyler, this is primarily a Norse pagan focused podcast. So, if you're open to it, let's kind of hear your story, your background, kind of what you're doing in the faith, where you're at.
Yeah, man. Not a problem with talking about that at all, dude. So obviously, I'm Tyler. Me personally, I've been practicing paganism for the past 7 or 8 years now. It's been a pretty long time for me.
I know it's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. I can't quite recall exactly when I started officially practicing. But I for the longest time growing up, I grew up in Southern Baptist Church. We are down here in the Bible Belt. Connor and I go way back when we were 4 or 5 at the dojo, doing karate and shit.
We little children.
We little lads. But I really didn't get focused into this type of spirituality until after a death experience that I had. I won't go into too much detail about that, but I was in a completely different state than I am now, and I did sustain a pretty bad head trauma, which left me DOA until the paramedics resuscitated me, and I spent about 3 days in the ICU recovering from that in a coma. And that alone kind of opened my eyes in a lot of different ways, not just spiritually, but mentally speaking as well. It made me realize that there was something out there that was greater than what I or anybody else could do in this life. And it really gave me the incentive to try to find that esoteric reciprocity in the things that I do day to day, not just concerned with the spiritual world, but openly talking about that to anybody who may be interested or just doesn't know. I do consider myself to be a reconstructionist. I'm not sacrificing 9 people every 9 years by any means, but it's 2024. We can all start acting like it. Me personally, I have a heavy what was the word I'm looking for here? Emphasis on the spiritual connection with the gods, building that relationship and community of people who may or may not believe in the same way that I believe. Like for Connor and I's instance, we have a very different Patreon, and we also view a lot of things a lot differently than what most people do, and I think those differences also show with our own beliefs.
For sure.
For sure. Other than getting into the nitty gritty right now, I don't know if I want to add anything more to that.
Okay, dude, that's what's up, dude.
I'm just a tactical kind of dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. There you go. All right. So, my name's Connor, and I have been a practicing Norse pagan for the last 4 or 5 years, 4.5 years. Probably 5 years practicing, 4.5. It took me a little bit to really come out of my shell, I guess, which I feel like is kind of the case for most people. And
in the broom closet, like one person may say.
Yeah, like somebody out there. Oh fuck, there goes everything. So yes, so I definitely grew up in a, not necessarily a really religious household, but definitely in a religious area. We're both from the southern United States, and so we're in the Bible Belt. It's, fire and brimstone.
It's rough.
Church every dude. Church every Sunday, every Wednesday. Salvation or eternal fire, and so it's I grew up going to Christian school. You know, I was really involved in the church, and I have family members that are also involved in churches, whether they're pastors or things like that. And, you know, I also just want to say that my experiences are not everyone's experiences, and I'm sure I somewhat speak for Tyler whenever I say this too, that anything we talk about, we're not going after a group of people, or we're not, you know, really trying to talk down on anybody in any way whatsoever. We have plenty of Christian friends, Muslim friends, Jewish friends, atheist friends, agnostic. I mean, everybody. We're cool with everybody. We have friends that are from all different spiritualities and walks of life. But I just noticed a lot of hypocrisy and just not people that were preaching one thing, and just not people that I wanted to look up to, whether it be their personal life or spiritual life or what have you. And I know that obviously that's people and not a religion in its own, but it was just it just never really spoke to me, never really called to me. And I really just kind of put on that facade for a really long time, pretty much all throughout my middle school and high school years. And you know, I graduated, kind of started doing my own thing, and really just I honestly, I can't even remember how I really came across it. I think I was reading an article or something, and it just sort of it just like connected with me on a really weird level, and it definitely a level that I never really had with Christianity. And so I started, like most people do, I just started buying books and reading and doing research, and I did that for probably a year and a half, 2 years. And for a period of that, I would have definitely considered myself like a pagan, and ended up reaching out to you, Tyler, and yeah, the rest was history right there. So, but yeah, I think another thing that I want to cover, something I wrote down on my little notepad while you were talking there, Tyler. When I feel like a lot of people in the Norse pagan community, they hear the word Reconstructionist and they associate certain ideologies and beliefs with that. Yeah, so I think I need to go ahead and say, I shouldn't have to say this, but when we say Reconstructionist, we don't mean any sort of races or types of people or anything like that. I speak for myself, at least. I don't know about you. You're kind of quiet over there, buddy.
No, man, I was letting you go for it. Totally agree. Definitely nothing. When I say Reconstructionist, what I mean by that is just the general core of the faith, and
Within our own practices.
within our own practices, of course, because that's what it always was about. It was never one person leading the full flock by any means. I mean that in more of the general sense of connection with the world around us, understanding that the earth itself, the wind, the water, the trees, the animals, they're all kin with us. We're all here floating on this massive rock, flying around in space. And a general understanding of how these peoples in antiquity could possibly have practiced this faith. So to me, trying to connect to the old gods, I feel like it's important that I kind of speak their language in a theoretical sense.
That is a very well spoken.
So yeah, I try to be. I can be a dumbass sometimes. Get me wrong. But,
We all can.
Yeah, I do see myself as a little bit of a perfectionist, and I've also, traveled the world working rodeos, doing ranch hand positions, like worked at Diamond Cross up in Bozeman for like a better of 2 summers. But when I, like you were talking about, you had come across it originally. When I first come across it, it kind of hit me kind of like an aha, like there's actually a religion out there that has a world accepting view and has this spiritual connection with the natural world that I've always been practicing, even when I really didn't know.
Yeah, I will also agree with that. Like you, I've traveled all over the country, outside of the country. I've been in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere with nothing. all over the country. I mean, the Cimarron, in the lakes in Canada, in Colorado, Texas, like just all over the place. And it's like
Yeah.
you have this. I don't know, man. Like I wouldn't say that people are typically like what's the word I'm looking for here? Like somewhat predestined into a religion or a belief or anything like that. But I definitely get what you're saying when you say you had a connection to stuff on a spiritual level even before you were like a practicing pagan,
Yeah.
or that was like a faith to you in its own right.
Exactly. And
So
I'm
that's
not
what's
as
up.
cool as you either. The furthest I've been outside of the country is Texas. So there's
Yeah.
that.
Hey man, you'd be surprised how many people haven't left their home state. So
Yeah,
you're doing
true.
better than most.
That's true. What brought you to the understanding that this might be something for you?
That's a
Was it
good
the
question, man. That's a really
hmm
good question. So what's really weird is obviously the stuff that's important to one pagan might not mean shit to the next, right? To me, a really big thing is like ancestry and like where you come from. And I am adopted, and so I never got to know I don't know who my blood is, right? Like I know the people that are my family and that raised me and have always been my family, but I don't know that blood. I don't know where I come from, where what's running through my veins, like what that life force is. And so I I guess I was really just looking for something there. And then I remember one of the things that got me into it was I remember seeing a post you made on Instagram that was like fully written in the Younger Futhark, and I was like, word. And so I did some research on that, and I'd done a lot of years of Latin, and so I was already familiar with like studying mythology and how to kind of dissect old texts in a certain type of way, like not taking them at face value and stuff. So I did a lot of reading, and I I don't know, man. It's just like everything on this path has just worked, whereas for me and my spirituality, nothing on the path of Christianity worked. Like everything that I've done has had some sort of outcome involving this faith, where like I practiced this. I was practicing for probably 3.5, 4 years, and I mean, as committed as you could be within reason, like not. I mean, this is a pretty laid back faith, so.
Yeah.
But like I ended up something as simple as like I ended up doing a DNA. I went on Ancestry, whatever, and it's like you like I come back and it's just like all Scandinavian, right? It's like Northern European, Scandinavian. That's it. And it's
Which
like
you are pretty
even
white as fuck. So.
I am pretty white as fuck, yeah, pretty pasty. But it's like even something as simple as that, where it's like it's how would I know that? Like my whole life, I was told I was Irish, Scottish, German. I'm none of those things, and it's like it's crazy to me how even something as simple as that, where it's like, you know, it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what your blood is, but that's a weird coincidence to me, you know,
Yeah.
and like that was one of those things. I think a lot of it to me is those sort of like spiritual feelings that you get, which just sounds so stupid when you say it out loud, but I feel like it doesn't matter what religion you are. If you truly believe in that faith and that faith is what speaks to you, you have those moments where you could be, you can just be outside watching anything in nature and just go and just have that like overwhelming emotion.
That
And
rush.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's the ultimate thing that really like set it in for me, is I can sit there and I can watch the thunderclouds roll in and watch the lightning and like just feel that connection with Thor. Or, you know, you go out in the spring and you're just sitting there in that cool warm air that's starting to roll in and you're watching nature wake up, and you just feel that connection to Freyr or to the Landvatir or whatever, what have you. Like I just feel like there's so many more connections for me on a daily basis with paganism than I ever had in Christianity. But I'll ask you the same thing, man. What was really I guess what was that? What was not necessarily the defining moment, but what's one of those things that really like keeps you in it?
Man, a lot of like what you said, the connection to the world around me for sure, but a huge portion was the hospitality and the gift giving aspect of the
I
faith.
also agree with it. That's a good point.
Obviously my family, my mother is very Irish. Her family tree was the largest Irish family that settled here in the South. And my father comes from Pearl River, New Orleans. So, I got a lot of asshole in me. But with that being said, a lot of that culture in those areas, um, something small, little like making enough food, even enough for a guest who may not actually be there, or leaving an empty chair at your dinner table in case someone does come knocking. It was something that I never really quite understood fully with my family because these are very old practices, especially up here in Appalachia. Um, my other side of the family was really big on that. Father, not so much. He's kind of a big burly man's man, so he never really concerned
He
himself
is.
too much.
Yeah, he is.
Man looks like he could squat fucking full timber, but
Two tree trunks. Yeah.
two tree trunks. There you go. But with my mother's side of the family, even like my grandma growing up, where I grew up on property where I was within walking distance, literally maybe 200 yards to my grandparents' house. And I would always recall when we'd have family feasts or just dinner in the house with my immediate family, they always had a chair or two, or they always had enough food to give another person, even if everybody has had seconds. And I didn't really understand it until I started diving deep into this mentality and this way of life. It kind of opened my eyes to the importance of hospitality and what we would call keeping frith, which is the understanding of keeping that peace in a household. And there's a lot of um, parts in the prose and poetic eddas that talks about that in particular. And when I was diving into it, I realized it's like, no, I mean, not even just talking about the the holidays, because it's Christmas tomorrow,
It is
and
Christmas tomorrow.
we were already practicing a lot of pagan holidays,
Oh
and
no, here we go.
we can dive into that one another day, or if I get a couple of more beers in me, I'll bitch about it. But I
I will too.
yeah, I I just had this moment of clarity that not only was this structured in my family, but this was a practice that had been passed down in my bloodline generation after generation. And and kind of basing off of what you said, being adopted, I'm lucky enough to have had my family around for many years, and I can actually date back my family because my family has a coat of arms. So I could
That's pretty
trace
cool.
my father's side all the way back to Denmark. I could trace my mother's side all the way to um, just south of Belfast. I forget the damn name of the old town, but I actually have a little bit of history with my family, and I didn't know until I got into this, but I did have prior family members who were also not necessarily pagan. I would probably say more so Wiccan or just absolutely crazy. Like she was. Whew. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that too much detail, but um, people who practiced these old ways, and even if it wasn't for the best of their family unit, they did have this sense of heritage behind it and the passing of story and the passing of tradition. And so a lot of these old traditions stuck around in my family for generations. And here I am, I'm 26, and I want a family of my own. And it's something that I've thought about for many years. And I realize now the importance behind it. And I
Mhm.
probably would never have if I hadn't have if I have never jumped aboard a faith based spirituality that comes with homework.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
a really good point.
definitely the hospitality aspect, and
100%.
knowing that the gods at any time could come knocking at your door and test your hospitality. That's a big thing, and I feel like that's something in particular that a lot of Christians have a hard time wrapping their minds around. Um, there is, I would like to say that I've had incidents where I've come across a wayfaring stranger, and the interaction that I had with this person made me think that it was the gods that were tempting and, or I should say, attempting to find where I lie with my hospitality, and keep that in the back of my head. I really do, because at any given moment they may come knocking at your door.
Well, I mean, even in the Christian faith, Jesus did that on multiple occasions.
Yes, when
You know, I mean, this is right.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
this is, I think that that's really something that stretches across all faiths, even though I think obviously it's very, very stressed in the Norse faith, but I definitely think that's something that most religions have in common,
Hmm.
is like, don't cause trouble in another person's house. Like that's a big thing. You know, if someone invites you into their home, that's the place of their family, the place of their peace, the place of
Hmm.
that's their sanctuary. And like, you know, I feel like we live in a world nowadays where there's just people just don't have that honor anymore. They don't have the I don't know. It's
No,
just people just don't give a shit, and it's sad, honestly.
it is. It's very sad. There's a lot of places in the world that don't have that hospitality too,
Yeah.
and I don't know, always been a very big thing, Got to keep that bad juju outside my house.
Of course, yeah. Keep the
That's why I
doors
keep,
locked, man.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's why I keep
um,
my strap on me.
okay, buddy. All right. It's in the have 'em all, folks. It's in the have 'em all.
It is. Never go an arm's length away from your weapon. You may not know when you need it most.
There you go. So let me ask you this: this might not really even have an answer, because I know for a lot of people, myself included, for a really long time, I didn't have an answer. But are there any? What would you consider your pantheon to be? Like, are there gods that you work, or spirits that you work with more than others? Are you more of a Aesir guy or a Vanir guy? Or are you like what? I wanna get to know what your inner workings here.
Yeah. So I do work with a pantheon. Um, I mainly stick to, depending on the year, of course, and what's going on. I have around 4 or 5. The only two Aesir gods that I do venerate in these moments, obviously Thor, um, and Heimdall. Um, I
I
used
love
to
that.
I used to really focus a lot when I first got into this on worshiping Odin and building that relationship with him. I've kind of pulled away from it. Not saying anybody's wrong for continuing that 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 exchange of love and gifts. But for me, I've you know me best. I'm not a very orderly person, and so the
I'm not either. It's okay.
yeah, yeah, the remainder of the gods that I do would be Freyr, Freya, and Skadi. But I also, from time to time, very, very, very spaced apart. This is not something that I would recommend to anybody getting into this new, or anybody who doesn't understand the grasp of this reality. But I've only done an offering to this entity twice. Uh, Finrir. I
That's an
do
interesting
have
one.
an emphasis on the idea of breaking personal chains. I've 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 experienced a lot in my life. I've seen a lot of stuff that a lot of people would be better off not seeing. Um, and and of course, everybody here who's listening doesn't know, but I do have a service animal, and
And he's a good boy.
he is a good boy. He's the best boy ever.
He's
I
the
love that
bestest boy.
dog. But
It's a peacock. What are you talking about?
yeah, it is a peacock, man. I get all the bitches when I take him around town. But I wouldn't necessarily call Fenrir a patron deity. This is more of an entity that you can evoke to bring about this raw animalistic power to give you the necessity and the tools to break free of your chain. Um, Again, I highly stress it's not a beginner thing, man. This you're dealing with an entity of pure chaos.
Also, not an experience thing. That's a. I know
Well,
people that will practice Norse paganism for tens of years and will not.
yeah, it still
Like
will not. Yeah,
that's a very niche thing for sure. But
very niche. I just very gotta warn because if anybody's listening to this who's getting into this and wanna be cool and talk to the big fluffy good boy, like really really stop and think about this because you're bringing in an entity of utter hate and utter chaos. And so that's why I
that brings
say,
us to another really good point that
yeah,
we kind of spoke on earlier, off of the podcast. And this isn't, we'll finish this up, but
yeah,
that we both don't necessarily believe in good and evil like as a natural
yeah,
construct. That's really a human construct. The only two things that exist are order and chaos, and that's, I think that most things can be summed up in that.
that and the balance between the two.
Right. Like if you know, I used this example earlier, but if you see a grizzly bear kill a deer, you got people that are like, "Oh my God, that's evil." It's like the bear is just being a bear. Like that's just chaos. That's not,
Yeah,
honestly, that's order because that bear is just getting food. But like to us, we see that as chaos.
yeah,
But I think that, yeah, I think that you going back to Fenrir, I think that is like you said, it's just chaos
it's straight chaos.
personified,
Yeah,
which is not always a bad thing. I mean, sometimes you need a little chaos. You got to have the yin and yang, right?
that is true. That is true. And I mean, I'm a very chaotic person. I'm not necessarily saying I'm biting people's throat out on the street.
Dude's
Um,
taking hands.
only if they touch my fucking dog.
You're right, dude. John Wick.
Yeah. But I do have a personal, I guess I should say I have a more intimate relationship with chaotic things. Just because I've experienced a lot of chaos in my life, and sometimes tapping into something like that in very very niche conditions. I'm gonna say again, very niche conditions, can be a good thing. At least for me, I've noticed that. But that also goes back to people who venerate Loki, and Odin. They're kind of one and the same here. We were talking about this off camera too. Um, some people don't like to evoke those kinds of entities, sheerly because of their relationship with it or the uneasiness of that chaos. Because
Right, definitely more chaotic than like
yeah,
a Freyr or Freya would be.
and that's why I've stepped away from venerating Odin regularly. I do I do still give offerings to him. Don't get me wrong; he is the All Father and the bringer of order in this world of chaos. But at the same time, and there's a lot of accounts. I'm sure some nerd who's a lot smarter than me out there who knows the quotes better than me will know that when you cross a certain threshold, knowledge and wisdom, you also lose a bit of your sanity. And I'm a nerd myself. I do like to research a lot of things, and I've realized that sometimes ignorance can be bliss, very blissful.
Yeah,
And so, um, dealing with that entity directly, you can kind of see it in how he responds.
right.
Definitely,
It's
it's
more of a tough love for sure, where
yeah,
sometimes you take the long way to get to the way you could have took a shortcut, but sometimes
exactly,
that's the best thing.
exactly. And for y'all to watch Marvel, no, Loki is not a brother of
Oh my,
Odin or of Thor. They're Odin and Loki are blood brothers, and I think that's where that connection lies.
Dude,
One is
I
just
don't
utter
even I don't even
chaos.
want to say the fucking word Marvel on this podcast.
I know, I know. I'd like to see a superhero movie made out of Jesus.
I'm
That would
saying,
be
dude,
that would be hilarious.
give him the Batman belt and a cape
Yeah, yeah.
and
Not
just send him to
even
work.
just give him those sandals and the whip, like that one time when he whipped the table over for
Oh
people
my god.
people paying in to be saved.
Oh my god. Oh, okay. All right. Well, no, you're good, dude. So while you were talking about, that's kind of your pantheon where you're at right now?
Yeah, that is where I'm at. And of course, I do venerate land spirits and ancestral spirits, but those are more of a, private one-on-one. These are not the entities I would necessarily evoke
Yeah.
unless like Yule or something rolls around where is a specific day for it. But
Right.
if I'm just giving thanks or if I'm asking for direction here at the house, personally, those are the gods that I would speak to.
That's cool, man. I took a couple seconds there to write down some. I was trying to think about kind of where I've been this year, and again, it's the night before Christmas and 3 days after the solstice, so we are kind of wrapping up 2024 here. But I towards the beginning of the year, obviously when it's warmer outside, I definitely connect to Freyr a little bit more. I get that sort of spring starts rolling around. I have a really hard time. It's gonna sound dumb, but I find myself spiritually struggling when it's like 105 degrees outside. Like dude, it fucking just kills me, man. It sucks the energy out of me and just all my good vibes are gone. But I definitely, once everything starts turning green again, I get a little bit of that Freyr mojo going. And then of course I do find myself doing a little bit with Thor as well, just more so for the protection aspect than the whole Thor bro fucking Valhalla thing. Which is a whole nother topic for a whole nother episode. And then I would say the one that I do the most work with is probably Odin. Which I mean is probably once every few months, like this isn't a every Sunday type of deal. But here recently I have also started trying to kind of reach out to Freya and Bragi as well, just for more of the creative and like sort of the like peaceful side of stuff. So yeah, cool stuff.
Oh, fuck me sideways. I'm sorry. Were you asking me something? I was taking my jacket off. It's getting
No, you're
hot in
good,
this
dude.
bitch.
You are good, bro. No. I wrapped up my little rant I had going.
Okay, bet. Oh, so you told me about your pantheon. I want to get into the difference between you and I, because this is
That's a good
something
one.
that a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their minds around. Even people who've been in this faith for a few years, no one relationship with these gods in the old ways look the same. So I would like to ask you, what are some of the things that you generally look for in the gift giving exchange between the gods? So like for example, how would you typically set up your altar? Not specifically, but for your bloat. How would you recognize a sign from the gods themselves? And also, how does that represent you in your day-to-day life?
That's a very good question. Very well put together. Okay, so first off, the altar and sort of what I look for in that reciprocity. I think that obviously what I would get you for a holiday or as a gift or for a celebration of anything would be different from what you would give me, right? And the next guy and whoever's listening would probably want something different than what we would want, And so I definitely think that there are pretty safe bets when it comes to what you give as an offering. But I think that for me, I like to sort of break down kind of historically or not necessarily, I guess historically is the wrong word, but traditionally what they're sort of associated with and what can reflect that. So like sometimes this for Braggy, who I've recently started to kind of do a little bit more with. I'm a musician, so like I'll give a musical offering, right? It's like it stuff that's a little bit less traditional, I guess, more outside the box. Odin, hate to do it. I usually just give mead, like, which, I mean, mead's fucking
Why not an
expensive
eyeball?
if you get right, damn. Yeah, Frere, I'll usually, I try and, as you do too, I try and get outside a good bit, go touch grass, and
Yeah.
if I go on a hike or something and I find flowers or, a cool stick, like just anything, something. I typically look for things that do, if it's going to be some sort of like physical offering, I will usually go for stuff that is stuff that decays in some way, because that typically I sort of associate that with some sort of like life force, like if I give a flower that's alive, eventually it's going to rot, it's going to fall apart. Or if I give mead, eventually it'll evaporate or it'll spoil, right? And so yeah, there's that. I usually think a little bit more outside the box when it comes to actual like what I'm offering. As far as signs go, and that's a tough one, man. I definitely if you've listened to literally any video on Norse paganism ever, I'm gonna say the same thing everyone says. Just because you saw a crow does not mean you saw a raven and it's Hugin or Moonin and you're fucking, you're blessed by Odin. That's just not like cool. Okay, whatever. I also think that there are things that are easily missed in our day to day life. But typically when it comes to signs, I look for more natural stuff. It's not like oh, that guy let me over in traffic, like it's, you know what I'm saying? Like a big one for me here recently is I've really started getting into rune work in the last probably month. So I'm definitely not experienced with it in any sense of it, but I've started to notice more things in the natural world. Like I'll look up into the trees and you'll see a rune, or you see sticks on the ground, or you see anything, and so stuff like that, you know, you also have, for me, I also take into account what I feel versus just what I see, like I could see something and it's just like, oh, cool, whatever. But if you sit there and for some reason you really find yourself drawn to it, or you feel that feeling in the pit of your stomach, like that, it, to me, it seems a little bit heavier than, oh, I saw a T-Waz in the tree, and then as far as what that represents, explain that part of the question to me again.
So the last part is like how does that represent itself in your day to day life? Like for instance, like if you had given an offering for a specific reason in your life,
Mm-hmm.
how would you see the benefit, the outcome, or even the denial in that in your life? Is it something that you feel guttural in your body? Is it something that you would relate to the personal space with people in general? Is this something that you may find yourself lost in a mental fog? Or is it a
That's a good
revelation?
one. I really think it depends on what I'm asking for, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that one of the key differences between this and Christianity, at least in my beliefs, is the fact that they're not going to do anything for you. They might help steer things in the right direction. Or they might help to encourage you or to make something work out in your favor, but they're not, I can't, ask Thor, hey man, I want to, I'm trying to get ripped by summertime and then sit in my fucking bed for 6 months, you know? Like, that's just not, it's not realistic. Like, you have to, if it's, so for me, I really try and just keep a good mindset. I try and stay positive and keep a good outlook and try to keep that in mind where, you know, just because I ask for something that doesn't happen, it doesn't mean that they're not listening or they don't give a shit or I'm, you know, it just means that it probably just means I didn't want it bad enough or I didn't try hard enough or it just wasn't meant to be. And I have recently really started getting into more of the like non-tangible things. Like it's easy to ask for, you know, things that are physical, but I think it starts getting a lot more complicated when you especially when you I feel like Odin is like pretty notorious for this where you start to, you know, I want wisdom. I want to be able to I want to do rune work. I want to clear my mind, whatever that entails. That's all a lot more complicated than I want this new job to work out, you know? There's a lot more to that. And so I really think that to me, whenever I'm asking for something intangible like that, where it's more of a mindset, again, I try to just keep an open mind and I constantly remind myself whenever I find myself like dwelling on it, whether I'm meditating or just in day-to-day life, that just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean I'm not on that path. And yeah, I guess that's it. I just, you know, it's a process and you just gotta kind of trust it sometimes.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So how about you, dude? What's that altar looking like? What are you giving? Fucking
Joke.
crazy.
That was a joke.
That's getting
That was a
edited the
joke.
fuck out.
That was a joke. So yeah, for my altar, you know, I do have a death experience, so a portion of my altar will reflect that. I do have a lot of bones. I read bones. That is my main source of divination. I try to get into casting lots and working with runes. I'll be honest, I'm probably just not intuitive enough for it. Excuse me. But oh gods, with my altar, I kind of use a section of my altar each year. You know, the side that I have contributed to my death and to the natural ending of being in this world, finding that natural serenity. I would typically use that end for more of the winter time, more of my practices when things are dead around me, when I'm myself feeling a little lost or out of grip with reality in itself. And vice versa with the side of life, what I can contribute to my personal self in this sphere that we live in. Um, and touching base on offerings, libations is a huge thing, especially with Thor. I do have an animistic ideology of the world, so I do also see inanimate objects as things that have a soul. Not necessarily a soul like most people would see it, but it has a magging, a physical representation of itself, a purpose. If it's got a meaning to be here, then that meaning could also be given. So, for example, like I would ruin knives for someone like Freya or Thor, even Odin himself. I would take knives that I make or knives that I've carried throughout the years. I would put it in the fire that I have that I'm using to have a focal point when I evoke these spirits, and I will pull it out of that fire when it's glowing red hot, and I'll bend it to where it can never be straightened back out again. Something where it's broken, um, just like in all of us and in all of the things around us. If it no longer has a purpose, it's it's lost that resonating frequency. It's lost its potency. So for me, that's the difference between me and you, I believe. I will give inanimate objects sometimes. something that has a meaning to me, something that I've carried around for many years, or even something that was very personable and I held close to me in my heart.
I think that's a
Um,
beautiful thing, dude.
Thank you, thank you. And that's also a part of the reconstructionist of me. There's been archaeological finds of grave sites where there were offerings, and there's bent swords that are twisted into a circle or folded in some kind of odd way, or even just struck with a hammer and broken. So that aspect really stuck with me as well because I've always kind of had that kind of like the natives here in America. You know, they had this same belief that everything around you has its own being and its own purpose here, and that was part of the giving process to the Great Spirit or to the gods for our sake. Um, it's like giving grain or other kinds of vegetables and meats.
Yeah.
I do libations a lot. I do give a lot of libations because I am a drinker. I also make mead, so that was a big thing for me. I set aside a bottle when I get done bottling mead, and that was strictly for um, celebrations
It's
or
always more meaningful, I think, when you actually like take the time to do it yourself.
yeah, of course.
It's
And I mean,
always.
there's people out there who don't have the means. They'll
Of
go out
course.
and get something for it. That
Like I
that
don't
is
make my fucking
horrible.
meat every time, you know? Like I go and
Yeah,
buy it, you know, and like cool. It's
exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that because there's recorded history of people doing just that in markets in antiquity. They would go to markets and buy figures. They'll buy nice dressings, jewelry, and then they would use these as offerings if they didn't have the means to bring some with them. Um, and my outlook with it all, when I do give these offerings, and I have this moment of spiritual bliss, if you will, um, I look around me in the world for not just my own mental clarity, but the actions that I have around other people and things in this world. I have a general sense, and this could be contributed to. I'm gonna keep saying this through this whole podcast, but like my death experience, when you have experiences like this, you get a little bit closer and you're a little bit more sensitive to that side of reality as far as what you feel and how you perceive things. So for me, how I see these prayers, because that's what it is. Anybody who tells you it's not a prayer, they're fucking lying to you, and don't fucking listen to them. Those are also the same people who say you don't kneel for your gods. That's just bullshit. Do it as you will, come as you are. But
yeah, I
at the
mean,
same
practice
time,
your own thing, but also don't shit
yeah,
on other people's thing.
exactly. There's respect in all kinds of different ways. And me personally, I have no problem kneeling to my God.
I agree with that.
Um, so being that I've had that experience, I have this raw, almost like static feeling that I get when either I feel like I am being approached or just watched, or even seeing the what do you fucking call it? I'm having a brain fart here. The patterns. When you see patterns in day to day life change before your very eyes, you can kind of recognize what hands are being played and what cards are being dealt, at least for me. And I agree with what Connor said. Just because you saw your crow in the tree squawking at you, it's not Hogan or Monin fucking telling you something about Odin or nothing like that. But I do also practice bird watching in a form of divination. And this is a very old practice that was even around here in Appalachia during the early settlers. Well, probably after that, because most of those people got burned by a stake. That's a topic for another time.
Uh,
but once civilization kind of set in after the Revolutionary War. Like these practices, you'd see glasses in the tree, these bottles. These were the Appalachians trying to catch evil spirits, and they would dissipate and rid themselves in the morning time. That's also the same reason why you see a lot of older folks around these parts putting a bristled broom, like a what do you call it, tree bristle or branch broom out by their front door. It's an understanding that bad entities would have to count each and every bristle before they come into your door, just like the stupid superstition of putting salt on your door seal. So back again with my Appalachian roots, I do have this understanding that's very deep rooted in both my mind and in my physical body that can give me these cues day to day to know, okay, I can see that this is working for me, or I can feel what I need in order to do what I must do. So again, it's not a vending machine. You're not gonna put a prayer in and then select F3 and it's gonna vend out and pick it up. Like, no, you're gonna do fucking work. And 9 times out of 10, that's going to look like fucking shit for you. Like, if you're gonna ask for strength, man, they're gonna fucking throw every fucking hill, every trial and tribulation at you to make you that. And I know that sounds like a Bible quote because it is a Bible quote, but it's a very loose Bible quote. But
yeah, they had to get it from somewhere.
It is. Yeah, there you go. There somewhere. But yeah, there's a lot of truth in that too, and I'd be lying as a Reconstructionist if I said I didn't believe in these different cultures and different faiths kind of meshing with each other, because we did see that in antiquity. And there's a lot of good to take from Christians. There's a lot of good to take from pagans. And I might throw up in my mouth a little bit, but there's also some good to take from the Wiccans. Everybody has their own thing that they do.
Yeah, we're all about love and acceptance here, guys, for the most part. As long as you're not a fucking lunatic. Don't fucking God. No way, bro. Not the sound bit.
Oh, now you gotta leave that in.
Fuck. God.
I don't know, dude. I'm just some dude out here living my best life where I can, but I also live out in the country. I'm at least 35, 40 minutes away from Connor now, and I'm trying to get a lot more into that in the aspect of my recreationism. I'm a key that I'm a coin.
That's
that
it. That's it. Recreationism. Yeah, I think that's right.
I don't know if that's a real word, but if it's not, I said it.
I think it's just recreation. Yeah, right, for sure.
So I'm trying to make a homestead for myself up here, and come this springtime, that's exactly what I'll be doing. I'll be tilling the ground. I'll be giving offerings to the gods for fertility. I'll be getting chickens and goats, and if it all works out good, I might get some other kind of critters out here. But I'm really looking forward to being able to, one, work with the land in such a spiritual and meaningful way that will also nourish me and free me up from a lot of these corporate fucking poison that they put in our food every day. But I'm not going to get political here. I don't know. I'm just really looking forward to being able to actually get deeper into this recreationist mindset and to venerate my ancestors and my gods in a light that is more at home with them.
That's what's up, dude.
Yeah, man.
That's a cool thing.
Is there anything else that you would like to add to that, Connor? Because if you do, I'm gonna grab another beer and I shall be right back.
I think that we're gonna end the episode right here, just real quick.
Word.
Yeah. So that I think that's a pretty good introduction for both of us, just so that everyone has a little bit of backstory going on to future episodes. But yeah, we're happy to be here, happy to be a part of this. We really just wanted to start something to where we could talk and spitball and hopefully
Yeah, something
entertain
really
somebody
basic.
out there. Yeah.
Definitely real basic. Hopefully, we'll get into a lot more in-depth talks and be a little longer too in the future. And
Yeah.
if you're also interested in the bushcraft kind of shit, I don't have anything going right now, but I'm gonna be making some videos on my channel, Hectic Heathen. You can always look that up. It's a lot more laid back. I'll be a pretty interesting boy if you catch my drift.
There you go. Well, all right, guys, that's gonna do it. That's gonna do it for this one, and we'll see y'all on the next one.
Later.